You know the feeling. We've all been there, right? You go to the store, you buy all this beautiful, fresh produce with the best intentions, and then a few days later, it's just a sad, mushy mess. It's so frustrating, it's wasteful, and it really feels like you're in a race against some kind of invisible clock. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the hidden science of why your food actually goes bad.
I mean, this is the classic example, isn't it? You buy that perfect bunch of bananas. One day they're a little green, the next they're bright yellow, and then boom, seemingly overnight they're covered in brown spots. So what is actually going on inside that banana? Well, the answer is way more dramatic than you might think.
That's right, it's not a typo. The apple in your hand, that head of lettuce in your fridge, the tomato sitting on your counter, they are all living, breathing organisms. You see, harvesting doesn't just turn them off, it just cuts them off from their life support, the parent plant. And that one simple fact, well, it changes absolutely everything.
So what does it really mean for a piece of produce to be alive after you bring it home? Well, it all comes down to one fundamental biological process that really is like an invisible clock, ticking away in your fruit bowl. It's a process called respiration. And just like you and me, that picked fruit is taking in oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide. It's literally burning through its own stored-up sugars just to get the energy to stay alive. So you can think of your fruit bowl as being full of these tiny little engines that are slowly but surely running out of fuel.
And this isn't some minor detail. It is the central factor. The speed of respiration directly dictates how long that piece of produce is going to last. The faster it breathes, the faster it ages and breaks down. So the big takeaway here is that the real key to keeping food fresh is slowing that respiration way down.
And just think about what's happening at a chemical level. As that fruit burns through its sugars, it's losing its sweetness. Its internal structure starts to break down, which is why it gets soft and mushy. This whole process even generates its own heat, which just speeds up its own decay. It's basically a one-way trip to spoilage. But what if we could hit the brakes?
And this is so cool. There's this simple but incredibly powerful piece of science called the Q10 rule. And what it means is that for every 10 degrees Celsius drop in temperature, the rate of that respiration gets cut roughly in half. This is it. This is the entire scientific reason your refrigerator works. By making your produce cold, you're literally putting its metabolism into slow motion. But, as you might guess, temperature isn't the only thing at play here.
Turns out there's also an invisible chemical messenger hard at work, a plant hormone called ethylene. And if respiration is the engine that drives aging, you can think of ethylene as the foot slamming down on the gas pedal.
Ethylene is basically the master regulator. It's the hormone that sends out the signal telling a fruit it's time to ripen up, get soft, change color, and eventually to decay. Some fruits produce a ton of it, and others are super sensitive to it. You know that old trick of putting an apple in a paper bag with a hard avocado? This is why it works. The apple pumps out ethylene, which tells the avocado to get a move on and ripen up.
And when you look at this list, you can see just how powerful this little hormone really is. It doesn't just do one thing. It speeds up respiration, it triggers the enzymes that make fruit soft, it causes that green chlorophyll to break down so you see the reds and yellows underneath. And maybe most importantly, it makes the fruit way more vulnerable to mold and bacteria. It's a total cascade of aging, all kicked off by one tiny chemical signal.
Okay, so this brings us to a really important distinction. Have you ever noticed how you can leave a hard green banana on the counter and it'll ripen perfectly? But a sour grape is just going to stay a sour grape until it turns into a raisin? Well, that's not by accident. It's because they belong to two totally different groups of fruit. So let's break this down. On one side, you have what are called climacteric fruits, like bananas, mangoes, and tomatoes. These guys have a huge spike in both respiration and ethylene production as they ripen, which means they can and do continue to ripen after they've been picked. But on the other side, you have non-climacteric fruits. Think grapes, citrus, pineapple. They don't have that spike. They have to be picked when they're already ripe, because they're not getting any sweeter once they're off the vine.
Okay, so now that we're armed with all this knowledge about respiration and ethylene, how do we actually fight back? How do we make our food last longer? This is where some really clever post-harvest technology comes into play, basically using science to outsmart these natural processes.
The strategy is actually pretty straightforward, and it's based on everything we just learned. Number 1, slow down that respiration engine, mostly by keeping things cold. 2, get that ripening hormone, ethylene, under control. 3, stop the produce from drying out. And 4, control the growth of all the mold and bacteria that are just waiting to cause decay.
So on a huge industrial scale, one of the main ways this is done is with something called controlled atmosphere storage. I want you to picture a giant, completely sealed warehouse filled with apples. Inside that room, the oxygen level is dropped from the 21% we breathe all the way down to just 1 to 3%. And the carbon dioxide level is cranked way up. This basically puts the apples into a state of suspended animation, slowing their respiration so much that they can be stored for months and still be crisp.
And you've almost definitely seen the consumer version of this technology yourself. You know those bags of pre-washed salad greens? That's very often modified atmosphere packaging. The plastic film itself is a piece of high-tech engineering, designed to let some gases out and keep others in, creating this perfect little mini atmosphere inside the bag that keeps the lettuce crisp way longer than it ever would be otherwise.
And then you have an even more advanced technique, something that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction: hypobaric, or low-pressure storage. By creating a partial vacuum, you can constantly pull away the heat that the produce generates from its own respiration. And this is the key part: you suck out any ethylene gas the second it's produced. You're literally removing the aging signal, which effectively puts the produce into a deep, deep sleep.
Okay, so this science is fascinating, and it's super useful for keeping the food in our own fridges fresh. But the implications of all this go so much further than our kitchens. This is really about tackling a massive global challenge.
Just look at this number. It is absolutely staggering. In a country like India, a huge producer of fruits and vegetables, an estimated 30 to 40% of the entire harvest is lost before it can ever reach a consumer. I mean, think about that. That's an incredible amount of food, water, and human labor just gone.
And when you look at the reasons why, it reads like a direct checklist of everything we've just talked about. A lack of refrigeration, what's known as the cold chain, means that respiration is just running wild. Rough handling creates bruises and wounds for microbes to get in. And poor storage lets that ethylene build up, triggering a massive chain reaction of spoilage.
And that's really the point. Every single piece of this science, from understanding respiration to managing ethylene, is an incredibly powerful tool. When we apply these tools, we can drastically reduce food waste. And that means feeding more people, conserving precious resources, and improving the incomes and livelihoods of farmers all over the world. It's a direct line from basic biology to a huge global impact.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. The complex little dance of hormones and metabolism happening inside a single piece of fruit holds the key to solving a major global problem. It's just such a powerful reminder that when we take the time to understand the fundamental rules of nature, we gain the power to solve challenges that might have once seemed totally impossible. Really makes you wonder, what else is out there just waiting for us to figure it out?